Okay, so we've got a really interesting topic to dive into today, all about copywriting in the age of AI. You sent over this stack of articles, and they all seem to be saying the same thing, like writers need to become producers now, not just, writers. What's up with that?
Well, yeah, it is kind of catchy, isn't it? That whole producer mindset thing. But it really gets at something pretty big, actually. I mean, we're not just talking about robots taking over writing, right? It's really about how this whole creative process is shifting, fundamentally.
Yeah, totally. So help me unpack this producer mindset thing a bit. We're talking about writers becoming more like creative directors,
Yeah.
right? Like guiding the whole shebang instead of just hunkering down and writing every single word themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Think about a movie director for a second, right? They don't write the script, they're not acting in every scene, they're not even like handling the cameras, but they have this vision, this overall vision, and they bring together all these specialists, these experts to make that vision real. It's the same idea here.
Wow. Okay, I see that. And it's interesting because it feels like this is happening everywhere, right? Like it's not just writing. It's like AI tools are becoming these partners in a way, not just these things that are, coming for our jobs, which is like everyone's fear.
Totally. And one of the articles actually used this really interesting analogy talking about how writers should be auditioning different AI tools, just like, you would actors for a film.
Well, hold on. That's pretty cool. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, right. So you experiment with different tools for different tasks, figuring out which one gives you that perfect performance, for what you're trying to create. It clicked for me, that analogy.
So it's not even just being a good writer anymore. It's like you got to be good at using these tools, like a musician masters their instrument or something.
Exactly. It's funny you should mention music because one of the sources, Greg Graham, he's the founder of Carmine Street Media, he actually drew this fascinating parallel to music producers who use sampling.
Okay, break that down for me. I mean, I get the basic idea of sampling,
Yeah.
but how does it connect to AI and copywriting?
All right, so imagine a producer hears this amazing drum beat, right? Like in some old funk song, and they think, man, that's killer. I could build something incredible around that. So they sample it, they tweak it, they might layer other sounds on top of it, and suddenly, boom, you've got a totally new track.
Right, right.
It's about recognizing those raw, those like almost accidentally brilliant fragments, and then you use your skills to shape them into something totally unique.
So these producer copywriters, instead of starting with a blank page, they're like curating, right? Sifting through all this AI generated content and pulling out the good stuff.
Yes, exactly. They're going through, all that output, and they're the ones spotting those golden nuggets, those little bits of brilliance, and then they refine them, they shape them into something truly original. It takes technical skills, sure, but it also takes that creative spark. You got to be able to see the potential in something that's raw and unpolished.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But it also makes me think about the whole ethics thing, right? Like if you're sampling music, you have to be super careful about copyright. Does that same kind of awareness apply to this AI stuff?
Absolutely. And this is where that whole producer mindset gets really interesting, I think. Just like those musicians, they're meticulously crediting their samples, right? Well, writers using AI, they got to be just as conscious about where their source material is coming from and how they're using it.
So it's not just, hey, I know how to use the technology. It's, hey, I understand the responsibility that comes with it, right?
100%. It's about respecting intellectual property, even when it's coming from a machine, which is, well, that's a whole other conversation. But honestly, it's something we all need to be thinking about. It goes way beyond just copywriting. AI is everywhere now, so figuring out the ethics of it all, that's going to be huge for everyone.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. Okay, but let's get back to this creative process for a sec. So if writers are becoming more like producers, does that mean like the days of the lone genius, toiling away in isolation, are those days over?
I mean, it definitely challenges that image, right? Because a big part of this producer mindset is collaboration. Just think about it. A successful music producer, they don't just lock themselves in a studio alone. They're always collaborating, right? With artists, engineers, songwriters, all those people to create that final product.
Wow, so we're not just talking about how people write. We're talking about how we think about creativity itself.
Right.
It's not just this individual, stroke of genius thing anymore. It's about harnessing all these different voices, these different minds.
Exactly. And that's honestly pretty exciting, don't you think?
It's funny. We always talk about creativity as this solitary thing, right? But what you're describing, it sounds more like I don't know, like a jam session.
Yeah.
A bunch of talented people just riffing off each other, pushing each other further.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. And it makes me think about another big part of this whole producer mindset thing, adaptability. Because in a jam session, right, things can change so fast. You got to be ready to just roll with it, improvise, embrace those happy accidents.
And that's got to be tough, right? Especially if you're someone who's used to like having total control over their creative process. Like you're not just playing the instrument anymore. You're suddenly conducting the whole orchestra.
Exactly. But honestly, I think that's where the real magic happens. When you open yourself up to collaboration, when you let go of a little bit of that control, that's when you get those truly surprising results, the stuff you never could have planned for.
Okay, you're giving me chills here. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second. You mentioned earlier that this whole producer mindset isn't just for writers, right? Like it applies to other fields too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a perfect example of that is like graphic design. I was reading this piece about how designers are using AI now to generate like design elements, logos, icons, that kind of thing. They're not letting the AI design the whole brand identity or anything, but they're using it as a tool to just, explore different ideas much faster.
So it's like having a brainstorming partner who can spit out a million options in like 5 seconds.
Exactly. And that frees up the human designer, right? They can focus on those bigger picture questions. What message are we trying to send? What kind of feeling are we trying to evoke? And then they can take those AI-generated pieces, refine them, combine them, really make them their own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's not like AI is replacing human creativity. It's more like it's amplifying it, right?
Exactly. Amplifying. Yeah, that's the perfect word. And that's what we have to remember, right? This isn't some man versus machine situation. It's about figuring out how to work together, how to find that sweet spot where human ingenuity and AI, they work together to create something truly incredible.
So we've got curiosity, collaboration, adaptability. It was like we're building a recipe for success in the age of AI here.
It's funny you should say recipe because this reminds me of another article we got. It was talking about how chefs are using AI now.
Wait, really? Chefs?
Yeah. Apparently there are these AI programs, right? They've been fed like, I don't know, thousands and thousands of recipes, flavor profiles, all that stuff. And chefs are actually using them to come up with totally new dishes, like combinations they never would thought of on their own.
Whoa. So it's like having a culinary assistant who can be like, hey, what would be amazing if you combine like saffron and pickled rhubarb?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, right? The AI, it's just providing the raw ingredients. It's still up to the chef to take those suggestions and turn them into something truly delicious. Balance the flavors, get the textures right, even present it in a way that's beautiful and delicious.
Right, right. That's where that human touch comes in. That's the difference between a decent meal and an experience,
Yeah. Exactly. And that's why I think this producer mindset is so relevant no matter what you do. Because it's not enough to just know how to use the technology. You got to have that creative spark, that ability to take something that's just like potential and turn it into something truly special.
It's about having that vision,
Yeah.
that passion. Because that's what drives us to create. Right?
Yeah, and to bring it back full circle, it's like we were saying about musicians and producers.
Yeah.
The best producers out there, they're not just tech geniuses, right? They're music lovers. They get what makes a song great. They can hear the potential in a melody, in a beat. And they take that knowledge and those skills and they use them to help artists create something unforgettable.
They have that ear, right? Like
Yeah.
they just know.
Yeah.
And that's not something AI can do, at least not yet.
Exactly. It's about that human element, that spark of creativity, that ability to connect with other people on an emotional level. And that's something that will always be valuable, no matter how advanced our tech gets.
I totally agree. Okay, so we've talked about how this producer mindset thing can apply to creative fields, writing, design, even cooking. But what about areas where the AI connection isn't quite as obvious, like finance, healthcare? What about those?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it speaks to just how adaptable this mindset really is. AI isn't just for creative industries anymore, right? It's everywhere.
I mean, it's true. Healthcare, finance, education, even transportation. It's changing everything.
And fast, right. So let's say you're in a field like finance, very data-driven, very analytical. You might think, okay, but this producer stuff, what's that got to do with me?
Right. But even in finance, there's still that element of creativity, isn't there? Like you're still solving problems, coming up with new solutions. You have to be creative to make good decisions, right?
Exactly. And that's where you start to see the connections. Like a music producer needs to understand how different sounds work together, right? Well, a financial analyst They might use AI to analyze these massive data sets and spot patterns that, honestly, a human would never be able to see.
So it's still about seeing the bigger picture, connecting the dots, finding those insights.
Yes. And just like that writer we were talking about, who needs to shape and refine what the AI comes up with, a financial analyst, they have to interpret that data, understand its limitations, and then make smart decisions based on what they find.
Right. You can't just blindly trust the algorithm. You have to be able to think for yourself.
That's right. So that producer mindset in this context, it's about using AI to your advantage without becoming totally dependent on it. Finding that balance, between human intuition and the power of the machine.
So it's a tool. It's not a replacement.
Exactly. Because when it comes down to it, it's still us, the humans, who are making the decisions, setting the goals, and moving things forward.
I like it. So no matter what you do, this producer mindset, it's a good thing to have in your back pocket.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's not even about any specific skill set, really. It's more like a way of thinking, a way of approaching the world that's adaptable, creative, and open to whatever's next.
It's about being a lifelong learner, right? Always wanting to learn and grow.
Yes. And being okay with not having all the answers. Knowing that things change, that's the only constant.
And it's about being able to work with people, right? Like really collaborate and build something together that's bigger than just you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are all things that matter no matter what you do, especially now with things changing so fast.
You know what I've noticed? We keep coming back to this idea of human connection. Like, even with all this AI stuff, it's the human part that really makes it special. That ability to connect and work together and create something meaningful. But how do we even do that? Like how do we cultivate those human skills in a world that's becoming, honestly, kind of robotic?
Man, that's the million-dollar question, right? And it's something a lot of these articles talked about, too. One of them even mentioned digital detox.
A digital detox.
Yeah, like taking time away from all the screens to reconnect with yourself and, the world around you.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your brain.
Exactly. Because when you're constantly being fed information, it's easy to lose sight of your own, internal compass, that unique perspective that only you have.
And that's where those human skills become even more important, right?
Yeah.
Empathy,
Yeah.
intuition, creativity. AI can't replicate that, at least not yet.
Nope. Not even close. So go for a walk, talk to a friend, face to face, read a book, anything that helps you disconnect for a bit and just be human.
I love that. It's so easy to forget, We're not just brains attached to devices, we're people.
Ah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about curiosity, collaboration, adaptability, unplugging from the matrix. Anything else we should be thinking about as we, step into this brave new AI-powered world?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that AI, it's just a tool. It's powerful, sure, but it's still a tool. And we, the humans, we're the ones who get to decide how it gets used. And hopefully we use it for good, right?
Yeah.
To make our lives better, not worse.
So it all comes back to that producer mindset, huh? Being able to see the big picture, knowing how to use this new tool responsibly, and using our own creativity and judgment to guide us.
100%. And remembering that we're not just along for the ride, We're the ones creating the future every single day with every choice we make.
That's a really powerful thought. So if our listeners take away one thing from this whole conversation, what would you want it to be?
Don't be afraid to embrace the change. Stay curious, stay creative, and never ever stop making cool stuff. The future belongs to the people who are brave enough to imagine it and then actually build it.
I love it. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into the producer mindset. Thanks for exploring all this with me. It's been really eye-opening.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And for everyone listening, remember, no matter what you do, you have the power to shape the future. So go out there and make it happen.